Hello, how are you? So today I'm going to discuss about AWS solution architecture system.
AWS.
In Google, if you search aws.amazon.com, so this document you can get. So in AWS site, this document is available. It is actually explaining AWS certified solution architect exam guide. Okay, so in this video I will try to discuss what is this document all about, basically the roadmap of this exam. So this is very good certification for our career, because this era is a cloud era. So AWS is a cloud leader in the market, and this exam will assess the knowledge and cloud services which AWS is providing. So if you have good knowledge in AWS services, then you can easily architect and design a very good solution for clients for their business need. Okay, so basically in this AWS solution architect exam, um, you need to have all the skills and knowledge about AWS technology, which is actually AWS services, which is focused on design and cost and performance optimize, and the most strong understanding of well architected framework. Okay, this certification also enhance the career profile and earning as AWS certified individual, increases credibility and confidence in stakeholder and customer interaction. Okay, and the good thing about this exam is this is not required any deep coding hands-on experience. Only the basic programming concept would be in advantage. So this is all about AWS solution architect, which is overall knowing the AWS services, what are the AWS services available, and how you can use and you implement in the solutions using the AWS services. If you know all the things in and out, all the AWS services, how to implement, where, when and why you can use, where you can use the AWS service to achieve your business goal, then it will be fine. So one thing is very important: you need to understand what is the AWS service and how many AWS service, and each service what is the use of that service and what can be the use cases of that service. If you know that thing, then you can easily implement a solution using AWS services. So main focus is to have a knowledge and to have a all idea about that particular service which we are going to use. And most importantly, there may be a scenario to develop a solution for a particular business requirement. Then you need to have all the AWS services knowledge, in which scenario, which service you will use, you will implement that solution using AWS services. So so the thing is, who will take this exam? So this is the answer is obvious: who is going to start their career in AWS or cloud field. So they should have some knowledge, and they should have some uh, proof also. They know the services. So this exam is very good to have a certificate and to prove yourself that you can implement service solutions using AWS services. Okay, so get start code. This is an experience in AWS technology strong. These are the prerequisite. Okay, and what you will learn, you will learn all the services, AWS services. And AWS services are all about compute network, storage, database, AWS services, as well as deployment and management services. Okay, um, the thing is knowledge and skill in deployment, managing, operating workload on AWS, as well as implement security control and compliance requirement. knowledge the skill in using the AWS managed console and CLI also you can use. These are the thing which is actually AWS global global infrastructure. You need to have ability to identify which AWS service meet given technical requirement and define the technical requirement on for AWS based application. What does it make to earn this certification? To earn the certificate, you need to take and pass AWS certificate exam, okay, which is AWS Certified Solution Architect exam, SSA C03. Okay, in this you will have two kind of choices, which is multiple choice and multi-response. So this is the all about, and you can also download the exam guide. In this video I will later on discuss the exam guide also, which is I have downloaded this exam guide. Okay, and here you also can get the sample question also. And if I talk about the exam overview, then it is associate level exam, and it will have 130 minutes to complete the exam, which is about 2 or 10 minutes, and the cost will be $150. This exam is very important. Okay, so that's why the amount is high. You will get 65 question, and delivery will be a center, review center, or online. You can do this exam from home as well. So you just for this exam, schedule the exam and pass the exam. Okay, there are many languages in which this exam you can do, which is English, French, German, Italy, Japan, Korean, and these are the languages. Prepare for your exam. This is most important thing. If you are not prepared, then you cannot pass this exam. Okay, so you have to strategize all your learning and preparation to get clear this exam. Now it's time to build knowledge and skill to propel your career. So there are resources, training, AWS resources, certification, which you can do. Okay, and skill builder is also there. You can take trainings, and Udemy is there, and AWS documentation is also there, YouTube, Google. So many resources are there. You just need to have all the knowledge. You have to memorize everything. You need to understand the logic behind everything and how to apply in exam. So these are the things. So without doing without wasting any time, we just go to this exam guide. Okay, the exam guide available over here, and I have already downloaded, so I will open that one and we'll discuss about that. Okay, okay, this is the exam guide. Okay, very good exam guide we have, so we will discuss about this. Okay, so AWS Solution Architect Associate Exam Guide. This is about this exam. So in this what actually the requirement is to design a solution. Okay, so exam validate ability or ability use AWS technology to design solution based on well architected framework. Okay, and so here what is the thing you need to actually follow. Design a solution incorporate AWS service meet current business requirement and future project need. Okay, need to design a solution using AWS services to meet the current business requirement as well as future projected need. So this is very important. And design architecture that use secure, resilient and high performance and also cost optimized, right? So these all the things you need to have in your design. So and then after that, once you did that and it is working fine and everything going good, then again you need to review existing solution and determine the area of improvement. Okay, and again you can apply some changes to optimize all the things. Okay, so these three things you need to do as a solution architect. So how you will do it? So when you need to get all the knowledge, you need to get certified and you need to do project which is involve AWS. Okay, so target audience is actually which is who are having at least 1 year hands-on experience cloud solution design and all. So those are the actually best candidate to do this. So in this exam contain, if we talk about the responses type, there are 65 question and there would be multiple choice question. One answer will be correct out of 4 and multiple responses also will be required. So 2 or more correct answer, most probably 2 correct answer required out of 5 or more responses. So you need to do that. And one more very good thing is there is no negative marking, so no need to leave any question. You just guess anything. If you leave, then it will be considered as a wrong answer, so that will impact your result. So make sure all the answer all the questions will be answered. Okay, and the next thing is uh, so exam result. So after once you submit your exam, then pass fail notification will be there, and couple of days you will get the scorecard. So that will be 100 to 1000 and 720 mark. If you get, then you can pass, and exact scorecard you can get in mail. Okay, so here this exam is actually divided into 4 domain, and the percentage of exam each domain is like there is a design secure architect. So this is a 30% stake in the exam, and design resilient architecture which is 26%, design high performing architecture which is 24%, and design cost optimized architecture, so that is 20%. So overall this is 100% in total. So 4 area you need to actually focus, that is secure, resilient, high performance, and if on after all cost optimization. The system should be least expensive, the cost should be minimal. Okay, and it should be highly secure, resilient and high performance. So everything will be high except cost should be minimum, because every organization or business should limit their expenditure. So this is the thing. Now talking about the domain 1. So design secure architecture, which is actually uh, secure architecture. So in this, the task statement 1 is design secure access to AWS resources. Okay, so our main task is to design a secure secure access to AWS resources. So here you need to have a few things. You need to have a knowledge and few skills you need to have to design secure access AWS resources. First of all, you need to create AWS resources which we required for your solution. Okay, so access control and management across multiple accounts. This knowledge you need to have. AWS featured access and identity service. For example, AWS access and identity management IAM, and AWS single sign-on, AWS SSO, AWS global infrastructure. For example, availability zone, AWS region, and AWS security best practice. For example, principle of least privilege. Okay, the AWS secure responsibility model. And once you have this knowledge, then is a certain skill also you have. So skill is like applying AWS security best practice to IAM user and root user. For example, multi-factor authentication MFA, designing a flexible authorization model that include IAM user group role and policies. Okay, designing a role based access control strategy. For example, AWS security token service, AWS STS, role switching across account access, and designing a security strategy for multiple AWS account. For example, AWS control tower service control policy SPC, determine the appropriate use of resources policy for AWS services, determining when to federate a directory service with IAM role. And the task 2 will be design secure workload and application. So you need to have a knowledge of application configuration and credential security, AWS service endpoint control, port protocol and network traffic on AWS, secure application access security service with appropriate use case. For example, Amazon Cognito, Guard Duty, MMSE, threat vector external to AWS. For example, denial of service, SQL injection. A skill you need to have is design VPC architecture with security component. For example, security group, root table, network ACLs, net gateway, determining network segmentation strategy. For example, using public subnet and private subnet. In integration, AWS services secure application for AWS Shield and AWS WAF, AWS SSO, AWS Secret Manager. Securing external network connection to and from the AWS cloud. Okay, for example, VPN, AWS direct connect. And then now task statement 3, determine appropriate data security control. Okay, so you need to have data access and governance, data recovery, data retention and classification, encryption and appropriate key management. Skill in, you need to have skills like align AWS technology to meet a compliance requirement, encrypting data in rest. For example, AWS key management service, AWS KMS, encrypting data in transit. For example, AWS Certificate Manager ACM using TLS, implementing access policy for encryption key, implementing data backup and replication, implementing policies for data access lifecycle protection, rotation encryption key, and renewing certificates. So this is all about domain 1, and now we will discuss about domain 2, which is design resilient architecture. uh, Task statement 1 is design scalable and loosely coupled architecture. Knowledge of, in this you need to have a knowledge of API creation and management. For example, Amazon API Gateway, REST API, AWS Managed Service with appropriate use case. For example, AWS Transfer Family, Amazon Simple Queue Service, Amazon SQS secret management, caching strategies, design principle for microservices. For example, stateless workload compared with stateful workload, even event driven architecture, horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. So horizontal scaling and vertical scaling is like, in vertical scaling, you just improve the power of a single machine by adding up RAM or CPU or hard disk. Okay, but in horizontal, you just adding the more and more machine. So in air surface area, you just parallelly, horizontally, you are just increasing the machines, but in vertical, you just adding more resources in a single machine, so it will vertically enlarge. Okay, so that kind of thing it is. How to appropriate use edge escalator. For example, content delivery network, CDN. How to migrate application into containers, load balance concepts. For example, application load balancer, multi-tier architectures, queuing and messaging concept. For example, publish and subscribe. So this is basically, the message is like, if you are producing message, then you will publish so that other can you easily get it or extract it. And if you are trying to extract a message, then you will definitely subscribe and use. So this is the thing. Serverless technology and platform. For example, AWS Fargate, AWS Lambda, storage type with associate characteristic. For example, object, file, block, the orchestration of container. For example, Amazon Elastic Container Service, ECS, Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Services, AKS. uh, when to use read replicas. Okay, workflow orchestration. For example, AWS step function. Skill you need to have for this is design event driven microservice and or multi-tier architecture based on requirement. Determine scaling strategies for component used in an architecture design. Determining AWS services required to achieve loose coupling based on requirement. Determining containers. Determining when to use serverless technologies and patterns. Recommending appropriate compute, storage, networking and database technology based on requirement. Using purpose built AWS service for workload Task 2, designing highly available and fault tolerant technology. Knowledge of AWS global infrastructure, for example, availability zone, AWS region, Amazon Route 53, AWS managed service with appropriate use case, for example, Amazon comprehend Amazon Poly. Basic networking concept, for example, route table, disaster recovery, DR strategies, for example, backup and store, pirate light, warm standby, active failover, recovery point objective, RPO, recovery time objective, RTO, distributed design pattern, failover strategy. So this is also required, and failover strategy, immutable infrastructure, load balance concept, example, application load balancer, proxy concept, for example, Amazon RDS proxy service quotas that throttling, for example, how to configure the service quotas for workload in standby environment, storage option and characteristic, for example, durability, replication, workload visibility, for example, AWS X-ray. Skill you need to have in this: determining automation strategy to ensure infrastructure integrity, determining the AWS service required to provide a highly available and fault-tolerant architecture across AWS region or availability zones. Identify a matrix-based metric based on business requirement to deliver a highly available solution, implementing design and mitigating single point of failure, implementing strategies to ensure the durability and availability of data, for example, backup, selecting an appropriate DR strategy to meet business requirement, using AWS services that improve the reliability of legacy application and application not built for the cloud, for example, application change or not possible, using purpose built AWS service for workload. Now talking about domain 3, design high performing architecture. Task statement 1, determine high performing and or scalable storage solution. Knowledge of hybrid storage solution to meet business requirement. Storage services with appropriate use case, for example, Amazon S3, Amazon Elastic File System, EFS, Amazon Elastic Block Storage, EBS. Storage type with associated characteristic, for example, object file block. Skill in determining storage service configuration that meet performance demand. Determine storage service that can scale according to future need. Task statement 2 is design high performance and elastic compute service. Knowledge, you need to have knowledge about AWS compute service with appropriate use case, for example, AWS batch EMR for gate. Okay, distributed compute concept supported by AWS global infrastructure and edge service. Queuing and messaging concept for publish and subscribe. Scalability capability with appropriate use case. For example, uh, for example, scalability capability with appropriate use case, which is EC2 auto scaling, auto scaling. Okay, serverless technology and patterns. For example, Lambda and Fargate, the orchestration of containers, which is ECS and EKS. Skill, you need to have decoupling workload so that component can scale independently. Identify the matrix and condition to perform scaling action. Selection, selecting the appropriate compute option and feature. For example, EC2 instance type, which is uh, meet the business requirements. Selecting appropriate resources type and size. For example, the amount of lambda memory to meet business requirement. Okay, so the task statement 3 in this is determine high performing database solution. Knowledge, you need to have a knowledge of AWS global infrastructure, for example availability zone and regions, caching strategy and services, for example Amazon elastic cache, data access pattern, for example read intensive compared or write intensive compared. For example, some database require a very frequent read select performance, and some database are very highly insert and update oriented, so you need to choose which one is. Database capacity planning, for example capacity unit, instance type, provision, IPU, input output, database containers and proxy, database engine with appropriate use case, for example heterogeneous or homogeneous migration, database replication, for example read replica, database type and service, for example serverless, relational, compared and non-relational in memory. Okay, so in this you need to have a few skills, which is configure read replica to meet a business requirement, designing database architecture, designing an appropriate database engine. Okay, for example MySQL or Postgre or Oracle, whatever database engine you need to have, we need to just select that one in database service as a database engine. So determine appropriate database type. So database type is like Amazon Aurora or DynamoDB. Integration caching meet the requirement. Statement 4, determine highly performing and scalable network architecture. Knowledge of edge networking service with appropriate use case. For example Amazon CloudFront, AWS and global escalator. How to design network architecture, for example subnet tier routing, IP addressing, load balancing concept, for example application concept, network connection option, AWS VPN connect, and private link. Skill which is required here, network topology for various architecture, for example global hybrid multi-tier. Determine network configuration that can scale to accommodate future need. Determine the appropriate